Hello, this is the luckiest maths teacher in the world. Thank you so much for tuning into this video on relative frequency. Relative frequency is also known as experimental probability. It's just the proportion of times something actually does happen. Now, in the previous video, we looked at calculating probabilities. When you calculate probabilities, you're usually calculating the theoretical probability. So, for example, let's say I roll a die. Probability of rolling a 4 is 1 over 6. That's the theoretical probability. It means that if I roll a die heaps and heaps of times, I expect that I will roll a 4 1/6 of the time. That's what should happen. But of course, if I roll a die heaps of times, that won't necessarily happen. I won't necessarily get a 4 1/6 of the time. So to illustrate this, what I did was I went and rolled a die 30 times and I came up with these results. So if I roll a die 30 times, I expect that I will get each of these numbers here 5 times, 1/6 of 30. But of course, in reality, it's not likely that I will get all of these exactly 5 times. And that's what we're looking at here. So if I roll a 1 7 times, the relative frequency or experimental probability of a 1 in this experiment was 7 over 30. For 2, it was 5 over 30, which is 1/6. 3, it was 0. For 4, it was 10 over 30, which is 1 over 3, and so on. So as you can see, the relative frequency doesn't necessarily equal the theoretical probability. The theoretical probability of each of these, of rolling a 1 is a 1/6, of rolling a 2 is a 1/6, and so on. So the relative frequency is the proportion of times something actually happens. And even knowing the relative frequency doesn't really tell you a lot about the theoretical probability. So here, I got a relative frequency of 0 for the number 3. But of course, that doesn't mean that rolling a 3 is impossible. Of course it's not impossible. It just means I didn't roll a 3 in any of the trials, not that I can't roll a 3 if I performed more trials. So it's very important we know the difference. Relative frequency is important for times when we can't calculate probabilities easily. So for example, if I wanted to know the probability that a blue car will pass the intersection outside my house between, 3 and 4 p.m., very hard to find the probability of that. The theoretical probability of that is really hard. It's so much easier if I just look at the proportion of times that it happens. That's why relative frequency is important. So let's answer this question here. What is the relative frequency of rolling a number greater than 2 but less than 6? So greater than 2 doesn't include 2, less than 6 doesn't include 6. It's basically saying what's the relative frequency of rolling a 3, a 4, or a 5. Well, in this case, I've got 12 such occasions, 10 4s and 2 5s. So the relative frequency here is just the number of times it occurred over the total number of trials. So it's 2 over 5. Of course, the theoretical probability of having a number greater than 2 but less than 6 is 1, 2, 3 over 6 or a half. Relative frequency doesn't need to equal the theoretical probability. All right, thank you so much for tuning into this video. This has been the luckiest maths teacher in the world. Have a great day.